What's up, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes checking in here, talking to Beneil Dariush, one of the top lightweights for the past decade or so in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He finds himself in yet another big fight. This time he takes on Renato Moicano at UFC 311, which is at the start of 2025, January 18th in Los Angeles at the Intuit Dome. Benny, what? This is a home game for you. You'll get there in about 30 minutes. You liking it? You liking the way this has played out so far? Your next
I,
fight?
I'm loving it because I was having a conversation with my wife about how we won't be able to bring the kids to the fight. I got too many now. It's not fair to them. Blah 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 blah. And then I get the call for the fight. It's gonna be here, and I was like, oh, thank God. I don't like missing out on my kids if I don't have to spend time away from them. And people are like, well, fight time. You got to be focused. It's like, bro, I am focused. It's not hard for me to be focused, Like I enjoy fighting. I get focused when I fight. Like it doesn't, but anyways, I don't get to miss out on much this time. It worked out really well. If I could have the UFC just stay in LA for me, that would be just perfect.
Now, will the kids go to the fight, or you just mean you can, do the responsibilities you need on fight week, but always go home and sleep in your own bed?
I don't think I'll be sleeping in my own bed probably because you always have to wake up early, media and stuff like that. So it might be easier to stay there. But like for example, Tuesday night I finish my training or I finish my interviews. I'll go home, hang out at home, and then go back to there if I want to do my training, things like that. I haven't really figure out my schedule yet for it, but I'm gonna be able to come home whenever I want to see my kids, or they'll come over there.
Benny, let me politely and respectfully push back. Um, I watch a lot of sports over my lifetime, and what I've noticed is a lot of times, especially around the times of the big games, and let's face it, you don't have a big fight. All your fights are big fights. So all your fights are like Super Bowls, right? Or World Cups. They come around every 6 months. Nine, it means the world to you. But the coaches will isolate the players away from the family, either like we'll say the Super Bowl. It's 2 weeks, in between the NFC championship and the Super Bowl. And so they let them do a thing or two. The families will get one day, but then they isolate them. Um, there's got to be a reason for that. No, I mean, just uh, I know you're
I
saying you're dialed in and all, but is there something to be said for how other sports
I
do
don't
that?
disagree. I get the situation there. But for example, I think my best camp or my best fight everybody talks about was the Gamrot fight, right? I was in. We went to Abu Dhabi. I took my wife and my daughter at that. And I would pretty much do my training, my 2 a days basically, and the rest of the time I was just hanging out with my daughter. We'd go to coffee shops, and by the way, Abu Dhabi has very good coffee. They have good coffee shops. We would go have, they would eat. I don't get to eat as much, so they would eat. We would go to places for family friendly places, and that was my like 2.5 weeks, and before I fought Gamrot. So I think there is something to that. But I also think it just personalities matter. Like it's not a situation where, for example, like the military, you're gonna do one thing and you're gonna do one thing for everybody. It doesn't work like that. Everybody's different. That's the one thing I've noticed about fighting. I can't implement the same game plan on fighter A for and fighter B, who are my fighters, let's say. I can't be a coach like that where I just use one method for all of them. So I think there's definitely something to isolating these guys, making them more hungry for what they need to do. But um, it's not so simple where I could go with the same game plan for everything.
Yeah, and I'll say something else, man. You fought great. I remember that fight against Gamrot. That took every ounce of you because you guys. He's a really good wrestler. He's really really tough. So that was one of your best fights. So for you to cite that, hey, I'm backing off because that's a long
Yeah.
trip and that's a tough opponent. So
Oh,
anyway,
that was a rough flight. There wasn't bad, but man, I must have jinxed it or something. Because our flight there was so good, and then I was just talking about how great the flight was. On our way back, Alva got sick, so I spent the next 18 hours on that flight. She would not sleep. She was like having issues with her ears, and like
mm,
I feel like I get everything about winning the fight and being happy, like everything was taken out of me right there. I lost it all. But we
Wow,
got home, man. Then it all came back. It was definitely a rough flight, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
that's great, man. Hey, like I said, you've been doing this for about 10 years because I went and looked back. Your first fight in the UFC was in 2014. And back then you were 25, and we probably asked you, like, hey, what are your goals in this sport? You made it to the big show. What do you want to do? And then, of course, you probably told us wear gold, make money, have great fights. Now we're at 35. And I just want to ask you this one time, and then I'll back off. Are you nearing the end of your career or anything like that?
I mean,
Or do you
of
still got a
course,
lot of gas in the tank? Only
of
because
course.
you're
I mean,
Anthony Smith, Chris Weidman's. If you guys just performed the other day, and Dana White says, "I think that's the last one," and
yeah.
so I guess that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm not a crazy person. I don't think I'm gonna fight forever, right? But I don't know exactly when I'm gonna retire. It's not one of those things where I'm gonna have be able to pinpoint to, hey, I'm 36, I'm done, or I'm 37, I'm done. Um, it's really two things. It's a desire to fight. Do I have the desire? And then the second part, which is just as important, do I have the ability? So currently, I feel like I have the desire, and I still believe I have the ability. I don't feel like I'm lacking, and I really do believe I've gotten way better over the year. It's been a really good year for improvement and growth. So um all that's left is actually being able to prove it, getting into that octagon and proving what I've been able to do. And if I could do that, I'm going to continue to fight. If I can't do that, there's obviously something missing, and you only get so many chances to fix it. It might be time to consider, walking away from this. I'm not I have nothing against guys who fight, for a long time. I have a lot of respect for these guys, but my desire was always to be champion. If I don't have the ability to be champion, I'm gonna consider walking away for the sport. Not consider, but I would more than likely walk away from the sport.
Hey Benny, so this new start of a run for you, what would you say is like the theme of it? Like, I guess if it were a book, what would be the name of the chapter?
I can't give you that answer until I get on the run. Once the run starts happening and you start feeling it, you start to really see it, and then you'll know. But it's always been for me like redemption, right? I always have these falls. My falls I don't know what it is, but I always have these pretty bad falls. Last time was like a loss, a draw, and then a loss again, and it was both bad knockouts. And then I went on an 8 fight win streak, and now I'm back at it, two losses in a row. And I'm hoping I can do something similar to last time, Lord willing, something even greater. And that's redemption right there. So if I can't do that, that would be really cool. That's my game plan.
Benil, so tell me if I'm overthinking things because we're in a new day and age where you have access to just about everyone, right? A guy like Hanato Moicano is always online doing something, whether it's his own show or, videos, all that stuff. As his opponent, do you ever check in on those types of things just to kind of see what his mindset is or what he's talking about? Or do fighters do that, or do you just kind of focus on yourself and that's it?
I know fighters do that. Bro, I got 3 daughters. I got a crazy wife, Vietnamese wife, which is a little extra work. I got I got my hands full. Thank God they're good with me training. I get to train really hard, and they help me with all the things I have to do as far as cutting weight and recovery. But besides that, the rest of my time really goes to my family and things that I like to do outside the octagon. I don't If I get a chance to watch interviews, I do like watching fighters interview, but I know he's got a podcast. But for me to be able to watch like every podcast or whatever, it would be it would be so time consuming. It would be so difficult. So I mean, and I have a lot of respect for Moicano, by the way. I think not only do I think he's funny, I think he's actually quite smart. So, but no, the answer is no. don't put a lot of effort into trying to follow my guys and seeing what they're saying or what they're doing in their interviews. My goal is to study the tape and learn from that.
How important do you feel the first 2 minutes of this fight are going to be? Because in our heads, as fans covering the sport, we can kind of see different routes for each guy of how this fight can play out. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. What do you think the first 2 minutes will be like?
No, I don't really know. I don't really think about it first 2 minutes. I'm thinking about more in terms of domination. Like it's either I'm going to dominate this guy or not. Those are the two options. And that's the way I look at it. The first 2 minutes is, you know, it's a feeling process. It's going to be who can find the mistakes the other person is making, who can sense the timing and things like that. It's not really I don't know, it's not really something I think about too much as far as what does the first 2 minutes mean. To me it could just be a feeling out process.
I want to point out a few things before I ask this question. One, I want you to know that I do have some gray hair and George's
Oh
beard is
boy,
gray. Okay. So
just his
that
beard,
being
that's
said,
impressive.
that being said, we've kind of lived through a couple eras of the lightweight division. Okay. You've been a part of those. Do you think this is the best it's ever been? Because you've also been through another era of that division where Habib was on top, right? Like, what do you think of this era of the lightweight division and where it stands in history?
Yeah, so I guess when I got into the UFC, it was Ben Henderson was champion, and then Pettis kind of beat him. Um, and then Hoffa came in, and Hoffa beat him. And after Hoffa, it was uh,
Alvarez.
it was Alvarez to Connor, and then to Habib, and Habib really held it for a while, right? It's been such an interesting time, but I would say in terms of skill, we have the best skilled fighters right now in the lightweight division, and that's normal. It's always with time, the level goes up higher. Once in a while, you'll have an individual who's so high level that he transcends through time, but in MMA, I think we're such a young sport, and everybody's getting better so fast. I don't know if we quite have that. Like I think, if Habib was to come back and I think it wouldn't be so easy for him. I think he could still be champion, don't get me wrong, but I think the fights that are available now would be much more difficult than they back then. Even if you take like a guy like Dustin Poirier, you can see he's grown so much in that short period of time. So I think right now the lightweight is the most exciting division, and it's also the best division. Some of these guys, we have guys coming up that people don't really know the names of that I think could be future champions.
Hmm, that's interesting. In 5 years, you think those lightweights will look back and think that they could smash you guys or just get the better of you guys? Like
Yes,
the sport
yes, and I,
evolves
I I
that
hope
way?
so. Like in 5 years from now, if I'm still competing, it's because I think I could kick my ass from 5 years ago. If not, like, what am I doing here? I really believe athletes 5 years from now will be better than us, and that's how it should be. Like if it's not, then these guys are getting lazy, or they're not really like growing, or something went wrong. Basically, there's no growth, and if that happens, I think it's gonna be sad for the sport because you don't get to see new things, new techniques, exciting stuff. A lot of the cool stuff we like comes from the younger generation. Everybody talks about he's fighting this weekend, Joaquin Buckley, and the kick that he did. Man, that was such a cool kick. It really put him on the map. But if you think about it, he didn't even start peaking. I think he's peaking now. He wasn't even peaking back there. You know what I mean? Imagine him in like 2 3 more years. I think he can be in title contention soon. Look at these guys that fought Shafkat and Gary. You gotta pay attention to these guys. I think 5 years ago, if they fought Kamaru Usman, Kamaru could have probably beat them both in the same night. 5 years ago. Now, that's a close fight. I don't know how that fight goes, but I think Kamaru would have a hard. I'm not saying he can't win, but I think it would be a very close fight against both of them.
If we took the Benny of today and transported you to 1993, would you have won UFC 1? Considering, so you have an evolved game, right? You have a
Yeah.
lot of knowledge, but you're also a lightweight, and there was some big dudes then. So that's why I'm asking the question.
And you're fighting 3 times in one night.
Yeah, 3 times
No,
in 1 night.
I would run through those guys like they're children. Bro, I'm a lightweight, but how much did Hoist Gracie weigh back then? He was like 178.
175.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
walk around
178.
like if I don't watch the way I eat and if I just lift a little bit of weights, I'm around 190, no problem. Like I have to be disciplined year round now to not get to big numbers. Like if I wanted to be 190, it wouldn't be hard for me to be 190.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
All
I'm
right.
just curious because him and I have kind of had this conversation before, but fighters are just so skilled now, so evolved. What percentage of the male roster do you think would win UFC 1?
I can't think of one that couldn't win
I
UFC
can.
one.
I think Cron Gracie would lose to his uncle.
No,
No?
Kron has way better jujitsu. You guys,
I don't know.
no, he does. You guys don't understand. Like, Hoist was very good for his time, but like Kron, when he was competing in jujitsu, bro, he was one of the best guys in the
Well,
world.
yeah, no, you're right about that for sure. But Hoist also offensively took matters in his own hands. He didn't just fall backwards. And I think Hoist would have the knowledge to stay out of Cron's whatever he has to offer up from the guard
No,
and ground and
Kron,
pound. And they had
Kron,
headbutts back then too.
no, Kron would take him down and walk through him. Different. People might not like what I'm saying, but that's the difference. The growth gap is huge. The difference with like if you watch Kron compete, the things he did against the high level fighters he did in jiu-jitsu, we're talking takedowns, right? It's a little bit trickier. I know he pulled guard in MMA against these great fighters, but like he could take down. He took down a lot of guys. He took down like Alex Caceres, no problem. He took down a lot of good guys. He would take down Hoist. He would run through him. I don't think it
What
would
about
last
Gerard
5 minutes.
Gordeau? That's the guy that Hoist beat in the finals. Big, tall Dutch guy. You think he takes him down?
Yeah,
He's
bro,
about 6'5", big
bro.
dude.
I'm if I remember correctly, and they competed in the gi together. Kron took down Bushesha, if I remember correctly. I don't know if I might be wrong. It might he might have Bushesha might have pulled guard on him, but I believe he took down Bushesha. It was very impressive. I remember seeing him compete against Bushesha, and he lost that fight, but it was very competitive, very competitive. Kron, like even though he's a shell of what he used to be, he's still very good. People, man, it's hard to explain to people how good he is. So it, it, it
You
yeah,
mean
he
jujitsu or as an MMA fighter?
both. Uh, you know, he could still beat a lot of guys. I think it just depends who he gets stylistically. Bryce Mitchell, who could wrestle, is stylistically he's not a good fight for him. You know, he could keep the fight standing. He's not a Bryce Mitchell isn't like a knockout artist, but he has enough stand up to make the fight difficult for Kron. But yeah, I think Kron would run through Hoist back in the day, and I think Kron even today could beat a lot of guys. But I don't know how hard he trains. I don't know his goals and what he's trying to do. But he's a fantastic athlete and and a fantastic fighter.
Is he in the room or what's going on
No,
here?
no, trust me.
Are you a fan of
I
Gracie? Because I am, and I definitely don't mean any disrespect. I'm just saying the last two fights, I'm not seeing what you're seeing.
obviously like I said, I think he's a shell of himself, but he could still beat a lot of people. I competed against him when I was a brown belt, and he was a black belt, and that year I was running through people, and I know it was brown belt, so it's a level below, but I was running through people, and then I
Yeah.
finally go against him, and it was the first guy I was like, oh man, like I'm not gonna be able to run through this guy like I've been through everybody else, and I ended up losing a very like close, controversial decision. But like, I thought to myself, this guy is freaking good. This
Hmm.
like he was world class good. So
Yeah, no, I
it's
remember he
hard
won
for
Abu
me to
Dhabi.
yeah, it's hard for me to like speak down on somebody who I know who's very skilled, you know. And as far as like, and again, all the respect in the world for Hoist, but bro, Kron would walk through him.
All
I think
right.
my number is 70%. And it's only because it is MMA, anything can happen. But you got like, there's a lot of flyweights, bantamweights, like some maybe getting through one guy, two guys, three in one night is kind of tough, especially if you just drew bigger dudes. But so just because of those little things, I'm gonna say 70 to 80% I think would win UFC one.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my number. I can't think of a single person that couldn't do that right now.
Yeah.
You think Crone would have got through the Dan Severn fight? Remember how
Easily,
Hoyt had his hands full with Dan Severn?
easily.
Because
Dan
remember,
Severn
Hoyt is
didn't know
six
jujitsu back
one.
then.
Hoyt
Dan
is about
Severn,
6'1", 178, and Crone is probably walks around at 160 maybe. And
yeah, yes, easily. Dan didn't know jujitsu back then.
Hey Benny, so this is gonna sound weird, but
Uh
see
huh.
your thumb? Your thumb is
Yeah.
what's making those little thumbs up. It actually reacts to it. It's the
Oh,
weirdest
does it
thing.
really? I
Yeah.
wasn't even trying to put my thumb up.
did you see the thumbs up that would pop up? It
I
happens when you
did.
do
Why isn't it
UFC.
doing it anymore?
I don't
I don't
know.
know, but there's like certain tricks. I think if you do like this, a heart comes out, or like fireworks, stuff like that. Yeah,
Are you sure?
There you
Oh my
go.
gosh, there is. That's cool. But
yeah.
yeah,
Because you know what happens is the first time we found out about that, we were actually talking about a really sensitive topic, and somebody was like going like this and thumbs up were coming up, so it was like somebody talking about death or something, and it's getting thumbs up. So I just wanted you to know that's what's going on. We're not.
yeah. I
Yeah.
thought people were just excited about how excited I am about the newer generation compared to the older generation. And
uh,
here's the thing, we can't disrespect the older generation because if they didn't develop their game, we wouldn't be developed. We it's really hard to develop your game. It's really hard to take like something and make it better. And something completely raw. Like you take something and you make it completely new and you make it better. But here's the thing, you made this beautiful masterpiece. Next person comes in, he could take that from you in 6 months. That's what people don't understand. I can work on my jujitsu and I can develop all these techniques that are like groundbreaking.
Hmm.
And as long as nobody else knows them, I'm way ahead of the game. But as soon as I teach it to somebody, bro, in 6 months they could learn all that, and all of a sudden I have myself a competitor. Everything that generation had, they've already taught the next generation, and there's been multiple generations after that. There's been the growth gap has been so great. Like it's hard for me to think of a fighter right now who couldn't go in and win the UFC one.
All right. Could Dricus Duplessis beat Anderson Silva from 15 years ago? So the 2009 Anderson Silva.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And if it was just striking, no. But if it was a full MMA fight, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, this is an interesting conversation. The way it went in another direction. Back to
Yeah,
you.
it's I get passionate too. It's okay, guys. It's not your fault.
You got Renato Moicano ahead of you. He's been on quite a roll. Was that an easy fight for you to accept? I don't know why. I think this is a like a flip him fight. Like, I'm talking about the odds. He's
Yeah.
a favorite here. And I was like, whoa. Because the guys that you've lost to are either fighting for the title or been there or whatever. And like you just talked about that 8-fight win streak you had. And I know he's on one as well right now, but I see this as a close fight. But how about you, man? Like, how pumped up are you for this fight? And where does the win over Moicano put you?
Obviously super pumped to get a name like Moicano. He's been on a streak, and I didn't know who I was gonna get. I just, I called to get a fight, and I want to. My thing has always been fight the best guys in the world, try to become a world champion, and that's it. And so when they gave me Moicano, he's on a 6-fight win streak. I'm not gonna complain. I don't know, is it 5 or 6? I think it's 6, right?
I'll look it
So,
up, but I think it's 6.
bro, so no complaints from me. Super stoked for the fight, and I have a lot of respect for him in general as well. So very excited for the fight. As far as who's the favorite, who's not, it makes sense that I would be the underdog because I'm on a downhill right now, and he's on the uphill. It makes total sense. You know, the question is, you know, what version of Dariush is you're gonna get? I think that's really the question people are asking. And with my last two performances, they're not expecting you know, great results. But I can tell you this is the best I've ever felt. I'm looking forward into getting to that fight, and I'm very confident. And I know most people coming off two losses aren't, but I'm actually very confident. So I'm pretty stoked to get in there and remind people who I am.
Yeah, I can't believe all of 2024 will go without a Dariush fight, but maybe the time off was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I mean, I just needed to recover. I had some injuries I had to take care of, and that was really it. And I used the year to again go back to the skill sets, improving my skill sets and growing.
If CM Punk was still on the roster, even he goes to the UFC one.
CM Punk. What belt was? I don't know, cause bro. Honestly, he might be able to beat a lot of guys back then. It goes back to what I said. They developed this great tool, and then they just passed it on to us. You know,
Mhm.
CM Punk, his jujitsu might have been as good as Hoist. You guys have to understand, Hoist's style wasn't really that creative. It was a lot of fundamentals because at that time that was the way you fight. You go for takedowns from, you know, nobody knew how to play guard. So from guard you just pass. If they do know what they're doing, you go to half guard. From half guard you go to mount. They give you your back. You go for the choke. You know, I've seen him roll CM Punk. He was actually not bad. He looked like a good purple brown belt. So yeah, I think even him, he has a very good chance of winning the UFC one.
Okay. Hey, thanks for the time. Thanks for letting us explore your mind about these questions. As silly as they may sound, I found them interesting, honestly.
Yeah,
Um, but good luck with the camp, man. I know it's probably a tough one because the holidays, right? Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then right around the corner is this fight. But we're obviously in wintertime. Luckily, you live in SoCal. It's 70 degrees year
mm,
round. But man, I think it's going to be a great, great party for you in front of family and friends in LA. Man, that's awesome.
thanks. Today was actually cold. It was like 50, bro. It sucked. I don't know how people live in the cold. It's difficult.
All right, man. Take care, Benny. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you guys. Take care.